Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. Golden champagne sparkled in crystal glasses, the banquet hall filled with elegantly dressed people, laughter and hushed conversations interwoven. The annual dinner of industrial giant Iowa was always a major event in the Midwest business circle of America. Standing in a corner of the hall, Gareth tugged at his somewhat tight tie, his eyes unconsciously searching for his wife among the crowd. "Have you seen Irene?" Gareth asked a passing colleague. "I think she just went to the back garden," the colleague replied. "You know, the atmosphere tonight is nice. The garden is beautifully decorated." Gareth nodded, taking 2 glasses of champagne as he made his way through the crowd. 25 years of working at Iowa had accustomed him to such occasions, but he had never truly enjoyed them. As a middle-level manager in the engineering department, Gareth would rather be in his workshop solving technical problems than making small talk at such social gatherings. But tonight was different. It was one of the rare occasions when Irene had been in high spirits lately, and he didn't want to spoil her mood. Pushing open the glass door to the back garden, the warm indoor air was replaced by the coolness of early autumn. The lighting in the garden was soft, casting onto carefully trimmed shrubs and pathways. Gareth walked forward and, at a corner with a trellis decorated with vines, he suddenly stopped, the champagne glasses almost slipping from his hands. There stood Irene, and a man. He recognized him as Warren, the new head of the sales department, gently cupping her face, their lips entwined, immersed in an unmistakable kiss. In an instant, Gareth felt the world collapse beneath his feet. He stood there, unable to move, as if struck by lightning. 20 years of marriage seemed at that moment like a ridiculous lie. Finally, his body reacted before his mind, striding forward. "You've destroyed our marriage." Gareth's voice was calmer than he had expected, yet it cut through the night like a knife. Irene and Warren abruptly separated, turning horrified toward the source of the voice. The color drained from Irene's face, her lips trembling. Warren, like a caught thief, instinctively stepped back. "You're wrong." Irene finally spoke, her voice desperate yet containing a challenge. Those 3 words were like a sharp blade, piercing Gareth's chest. Not an apology, not an explanation, but an accusation. In that moment, Gareth understood that his marriage had long been dead in all but name. "We'll talk at home," Gareth said as he turned to leave, leaving Irene and Warren standing there, like statues. On the way home, a suffocating silence filled the car. Gareth's fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, but his thoughts flew back to the past. 20 years ago, Irene had joined Iowa as a young administrative assistant, assigned to the engineering department to assist Gareth. She was 26 then, full of energy, with a smile as bright as sunshine. Gareth, a 30-year-old engineer immersed in blueprints and data, felt somewhat uncomfortable with the arrival of this new assistant. But Irene's efficiency and enthusiasm soon changed his mind. She organized chaotic files into perfect order, remembered every detail, and even learned to understand some technical terms so she could better assist with his work. Their relationship evolved from professional to personal, and then to love, which seemed natural. Gareth remembered their first date at a small restaurant, Irene dressed in a light blue dress, her smile warmer than the restaurant's candlelight. 3 years later, they married with the blessings of family and friends. The first few years after marriage were nearly perfect. Irene quit her job to become a full-time housewife. They bought a suburban house with a garden and white fences, living the American middle-class life many yearned for. Gareth's career advanced steadily, becoming an indispensable technical pillar of the company. He wasn't a workaholic, leaving work punctually each day, accompanying Irene to movies on weekends, cooking dinner together, or enjoying the sun in the backyard. But as time passed, their life gradually sank into a comfortable but monotonous routine. "Why him?" When the car stopped in front of the house, Gareth suddenly broke the silence. Irene didn't immediately answer, her hands firmly gripping her purse, gaze fixed forward. "Because he sees me," she finally said, in a voice almost inaudible. Upon entering the house, the once cozy home now seemed so foreign. In the living room, Irene stood by the window, her back to Gareth. "How long have you been with him?" asked Gareth, with a calmness in his voice that surprised even himself. 6 months. Irene turned around, eyes swollen but tone firm. But that's not important. What's important is, how long has it been since you really saw me? Gareth, our marriage died a long time ago. You just didn't notice. Gareth felt a wave of absurdity. I come home every day, we eat together, go out on weekends. Where did I not notice you? But were you really present? Irene's voice rose. Your body is here, but your thoughts have long flown elsewhere. How long has it been since we really talked? Not about bills, not about housework, but about ourselves, our feelings, our dreams. Gareth opened his mouth to defend himself, but suddenly realized he truly couldn't remember when they last had a deep conversation. But this couldn't excuse betrayal. So you chose to betray? You found another man? This is your solution? Gareth's voice finally showed anger. Warren listens to me, really listens. Irene's words carried a desperate justification. When I talked about wanting to return to work, you just brushed me off. When I mentioned feeling lonely, you just nodded. But Warren, he gave me attention, gave me affirmation, made me feel that I'm not just a housewife, but a valuable person. Gareth felt dizzy. So it's my fault? You sleep with someone else, and it's my fault. Not entirely. Irene's voice lowered. But our problems didn't start today. Your distance, my dissatisfaction, they've been accumulating for a long time. Warren was just a catalyst. Gareth silently looked at this woman he once deeply loved, but who had now become so strange. He turned toward the bedroom. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. In the depth of night, Gareth lay in the guest room bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Countless images flashed through his mind. Irene and Warren's kiss in the garden, Irene's expression when she said, "You're wrong," and her justifications tonight. Anger, betrayal, sadness, confusion, all these emotions came like tides. In the darkness before dawn, a decision gradually formed in Gareth's heart. He would not forgive this kind of betrayal, would not accept this kind of justification. If Irene believed their marriage was already dead, then it was time to officially hold its funeral. The next morning, Gareth got up very early. He put on his usual work clothes and brewed coffee as usual. When Irene appeared at the kitchen door, her eyes were swollen. Evidently, she hadn't slept all night. Gareth calmly looked at her and pushed a cup of coffee across the table. I want to know everything, said Gareth, with no emotion in his voice. Over the next hour, Irene spoke haltingly about how her relationship with Warren began. 6 months ago, at a company annual activity planning meeting, Warren, as the new head of sales, proposed to reform the company's market strategy. After the meeting, he actively sought out Irene to chat, asking her opinion about the company as an old employee's spouse. At first, it was just occasional coffees and phone calls, but soon evolved into more intimate dates. He makes me feel young, makes me feel appreciated, said Irene, with a tone of self-reproach in her voice, yet also a touch of nostalgia. He asks about my thoughts, praises my intelligence, and doesn't just treat me as your appendage. Gareth listened silently, heartbreaking but expressionless. When Irene finished, he only asked one question. Do you love him? Irene remained silent for a long time, finally saying quietly, I don't know. Maybe. I just fell in love with how he makes me feel. Gareth stood up, his voice calm but resolute. I'll contact a lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings. Irene's face turned pale. Just like that? 20 years of marriage, and you're not even willing to try to save it. Gareth turned around, the coldness in his eyes making Irene tremble. When you chose to let another man into your life, into your body, you had already made your choice. I'm just respecting it. In the days that followed, Gareth operated like a robot. During the day, he went to work normally, completed tasks, talked with colleagues. No one could tell that his world had been turned upside down. At night, he returned to the house that no longer felt like home, coexisting with Irene in a cold atmosphere, both like strangers. On the weekend, when Irene went to stay for a few days at her sister's house, Gareth began his plan. First, he calmly examined the home computer and bills. Irene didn't know that, as a network security expert, Gareth had always had the ability to track activities on the home network. Now, these skills came in handy. He found the email exchanges between Irene and Warren, text message records, via cloud backup, and even hotel bills from their dates. Each piece of information was like a knife, deeply stabbing into Gareth's heart, but he forced himself to continue. He needed these evidences, not just for the divorce proceedings, but also for his revenge plan. At the same time, Gareth began secretly investigating Warren's activities at the company. As a veteran employee of the engineering department, he knew the company's systems and processes inside out. Soon, he discovered several anomalies in Warren's sales data: falsified customer feedback, exaggerated sales expectations, and even some suspicious expense reimbursements. None of this was enough for a conviction, but enough to draw the attention of the company's top management. Gareth also learned that Warren was handling a crucial customer order, which could be key for Warren's position in the company. As a system security expert, Gareth knew how to access internal communications and files of Warren's team, from which he discovered some serious quality control flaws. These flaws, if not corrected in time, would likely lead to product failure. Normally, Gareth would immediately report such a problem to his superiors. But this time, he decided to wait. He did not manipulate any data or actively sabotage the system, merely chose not to alert Warren and his team about this potential issue. This wasn't active sabotage, but passive allowance, in a legal and moral gray area, but enough to let Warren suffer the consequences of his own actions. In the third week, Gareth met with an experienced divorce lawyer. He brought all the evidence and calmly stated the situation. After listening, the lawyer nodded. With these evidences, plus the state law provisions regarding infidelity, you will be in an advantageous position regarding property division and other aspects. I don't want joint custody, said Gareth. Although their children were already in college, the legal attitude was important. I want to make sure she understands the price of betrayal. The lawyer scrutinized Gareth, as if assessing his determination. It will be a tough battle, but with these evidences, we have a good chance of winning. When the divorce papers were served to Irene, her reaction went from shock to anger, then to panic. She made countless calls, sent numerous text messages, ranging from pleading to accusations, with extremely volatile emotions. You can't do this, Irene said emotionally during an unexpected encounter. 20 years of marriage and you just throw it away like this? Gareth looked at her calmly. No, you were the one who threw it away. Meanwhile, Gareth anonymously submitted a report about Warren's possible business misconduct to the company's human resources and compliance departments. He provided enough clues, but did not reveal that he was the source of the information, nor did he mention the relationship between Warren and Irene. This was part of his revenge plan, but he didn't want Irene's reputation to be completely destroyed in the company. A month later, the important customer order that Warren was handling entered its final stage. As Gareth had anticipated, the undiscovered and unrepaired quality issues finally led to product failure. The customer received products that did not meet specifications, angrily demanding explanations and compensation. As the responsible person, Warren faced enormous pressure and questioning. At the same time, the company's investigation also began to show results. Several of Warren's business practices were questioned, especially regarding client relationships and expense reimbursements. Under pressure, Warren's performance began to show obvious decline. Heard that Warren's big client has problems? A colleague of Gareth's asked during lunch one day. That project seems to have been completely messed up. Gareth just nodded, showing appropriate surprise and concern. Really? I haven't paid much attention to the sales department's affairs, though I did hear there have been some quality issues lately. Not just quality issues, the colleague said in a low voice. I heard the audit department is also checking his accounts. Someone anonymously reported him for falsifying performance and expenses. Gareth ate his lunch expressionlessly, but with a complex sense of satisfaction inside. He knew this was just the beginning. Warren began to feel the pressure. Customer complaints, superiors questioning, audit department investigations. All this had him overwhelmed. Meanwhile, his attitude toward Irene also began to change. At first, he still comforted her, saying these were just temporary difficulties. Their relationship wouldn't be affected. But as the problems deepened, he became increasingly distant, increasingly impatient. I really don't have time now, Irene, Warren said on the phone, his voice full of fatigue and irritation. Some problems have come up at the company. I need to focus on dealing with them. But I need you, Warren. Irene was almost begging. Gareth has already filed for divorce. I feel very scared and lonely. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Warren sighed. We can talk about this later. Now is not the right time. As days passed, Warren's attitude grew increasingly cold. He no longer frequently replied to Irene's messages, and dates became fewer and farther between. When Irene finally couldn't help but confront him face to face, Warren's response left her ice cold. "I never promised anything, Irene," said Warren, with a tone of impatience. "We're adults. I thought we both understood this was just a pleasant time, not some long-term commitment." "But you said you loved me." Irene's voice trembled. "You said we had a future." Warren avoided her gaze. "The situation was different then. Now my career is in jeopardy. My marriage also has problems. I need to focus on saving my own life, not be distracted by additional relationships." It was then that Irene truly saw Warren's real nature. He didn't really care about her, just used her as a distraction, something that made him feel good in a strange city. When troubles appeared, he chose self-protection without hesitation. Meanwhile, the divorce process continued. With the evidence provided by Gareth, the court clearly leaned towards him in property division. As the unfaithful party within the marriage, Irene's position was very disadvantageous. When the judge announced the preliminary ruling, Irene could hardly believe her ears. Not only would she lose most of the common property, but she would also have to bear part of the legal costs. As the divorce proceedings progressed, Irene's situation became increasingly difficult. She not only faced economic pressures, but also alienation from her social circle. When the news spread, some former friends began to avoid her, no longer inviting her to gatherings or activities. Meanwhile, Warren's situation was also deteriorating. That failed customer order not only caused huge economic losses, but also seriously damaged the company's reputation. The audit department's investigation found multiple financial and reimbursement irregularities, with conclusive evidence. Finally, the company management made a decision. Warren was fired and required to compensate for part of the losses caused by his misconduct. "Warren was fired yesterday," a colleague informed Gareth. "The entire sales department is talking about it. They say he's also facing a civil suit from the company." Gareth just nodded, expression calm. He didn't show any particular interest or satisfaction, though inwardly he had already confirmed the success of his revenge plan. Irene soon learned of Warren's situation. She tried to contact him, hoping to receive some support or at least comfort. But Warren rejected all her calls and messages. Finally, in a chance encounter, Warren's reaction was cold and direct. "I have bigger troubles to deal with now, Irene," he said harshly, fatigue and anger clearly visible on his face. "I've lost my job, possibly facing a lawsuit, and my wife has also discovered our affair. I don't need you to add to my troubles." "But you said we would face all this together." Irene's voice was weak and uncertain. Warren let out a cold laugh. "That was when everything was still under control. Now the situation is completely different. I need to focus on saving my own life, not caring for your feelings." Irene stood there, feeling a loneliness and panic unprecedented. She clearly realized that she had not only lost her husband and marriage, but also the person she thought would be her support. Now, she really only had herself left. The divorce was finally finalized 4 months later. According to the judgment, Gareth obtained most of the common property, including their house. Irene only received a small portion of the property and short-term transitional support. For Irene, who was approaching 50, this meant she had to start over, find a job, build a new life. In the courthouse hallway, when all procedures were finished, Irene tried to talk to Gareth one last time. "Gareth," she called to her ex-husband who was preparing to leave. "I know all this is my fault, but can we really not?" Gareth stopped, turned to face her, his expression calm and resolute. "Irene, there's nothing more to say between us. Good luck." Irene, watching Gareth's back as he walked away, suddenly understood a cruel fact. Some mistakes can never be fixed, some wounds can never be healed. Her choice had not only destroyed her marriage, but also her future. The following months were exceptionally difficult for Irene. She found a job as a cashier, barely maintaining her life. She moved into a small apartment, surrounded by strangers. Each night, when she lay alone in bed, she would recall the life she once had but destroyed with her own hands, full of regret and self-reproach. Sometimes, she couldn't help but send messages to Gareth, asking about his situation or expressing regret. But Gareth never replied. Her phone calls, text messages, and even messages passed through mutual friends, all fell into a black hole. For Gareth, this marriage and this person had completely ended, not worth spending even a minute or a second more of his time and energy. Warren's situation wasn't any better. After being fired by Iwell, his professional reputation suffered severe damage, almost impossible to find an equivalent position in the same industry. His wife, upon discovering the affair, immediately filed for divorce, and in the lawsuit obtained most of the property and custody of the children. The civil lawsuit that Iwell filed against him finally ended with his agreement to pay a considerable compensation, which almost depleted his remaining savings. A year later, Iwell's annual dinner was held again as scheduled. Gareth attended as the newly promoted technical director, behaving appropriately, speaking confidently. The person who was once torn apart at the same occasion no longer existed, replaced by someone more determined, more focused. "Do you know how Irene is doing now?" an old colleague asked curiously. Gareth shook his head. "We have no contact anymore." This was true. Since the divorce was completed, Gareth had completely cut off all contact with Irene. "What about Warren?" the colleague continued asking, obviously interested in the subsequent development of this office tragedy. "Has he found a job?" Gareth shrugged. "I don't care about his affairs. For me, that's all in the past." Gareth's attitude was clear. He neither forgave nor forgot, but he chose to look forward rather than immerse himself in past pain. This wasn't forgiveness, but a decision made for his own mental health. Meanwhile, Irene's life remained difficult. The cashier job barely covered basic expenses, far from being able to support the lifestyle she was accustomed to. She tried dating several times, but all ended without success. Those men either felt uncomfortable with her past or were only seeking brief relationships. No one was willing to take seriously a woman approaching 50 with a failed marriage. One day, Irene accidentally encountered Warren at the supermarket. The once dapper sales manager now looked haggard, wearing a cheap suit, noticeably thinner. He was standing in front of the shelf comparing two different priced loaves of bread, obviously calculating every penny. Irene initially wanted to greet him, but seeing Warren's tired appearance, she changed her mind. There was nothing left to say between them. They had both paid for their choices. Both were bearing the consequences in their own ways. One Saturday morning, 2 years after the divorce, Gareth was enjoying breakfast in his new apartment when the doorbell suddenly rang. Opening the door, he was surprised to find Irene standing there, holding an envelope in her hand. "I won't take up much of your time," said Irene, her voice calm and restrained. "I just wanted to give you this personally." Gareth took the envelope but didn't immediately open it. "What is this?" "Some money I owe you," Irene explained. "I know it's not enough to make up for anything, but at least it's what I can do." Gareth nodded, but didn't invite her in. Their conversation was brief and distant, without the intimacy of the past, nor the resentment of the early divorce. Just the cold politeness between two people who once deeply loved but now are strangers. "You look good," Irene finally said, a complex emotion flashing in her eyes. "I'm glad to see you doing well." Gareth just nodded. "Thank you. All the best to you, Irene." After closing the door, Gareth opened the envelope and found a check for the amount of a part of what Irene had received from the divorce property division. No attached note, no explanation, just the check and Irene's signature. Gareth placed the check on the table, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity, just a quiet confirmation. Everything was over. Meanwhile, Warren's life was also slowly rebuilding. After being fired from Iwell, he finally found a low-level position at a small sales company in another state. The salary was only a small fraction of what he earned before, and the work environment was far from as comfortable as before. But at least it was a new beginning. He also tried to repair the relationship with his ex-wife, hoping to regain the trust and respect of his children. But this road was exceptionally difficult. His ex-wife still harbored resentment for his betrayal, and his children also felt angry and confused by his departure. Each visit was filled with tension and discomfort, but Warren knew that this was the price he had to pay. 3 years later, Garrett's position in the company rose one more level, becoming a technical vice president. His life was fulfilling and peaceful, and outside of work, he began to participate in some community activities, even started dating, although he remained cautious with new relationships. That painful marriage and betrayal taught him an important lesson. Once trust is broken, it can never be fully repaired. Irene still worked at the supermarket, but she had learned new skills through night school, hoping to find better job opportunities. Her life was simple and difficult, but she had learned to accept reality. Sometimes, when she saw happy couples or families, a bitter regret would still arise in her heart. But she knew all this was the result of her own choices. One casual weekend, Gareth was attending a technical conference at the other end of the city. Afterwards, while waiting for a taxi in the hotel lobby, he suddenly saw Warren. After 3 years without seeing each other, Warren had completely changed. Gray hair, haggard face, the confidence and charm in his eyes completely gone. Warren also saw Gareth, their gazes meeting in the air. After a moment of awkwardness and surprise, Warren lowered his head, quickly turning away. Gareth didn't follow or call out to him. In his view, Warren had already received the punishment he deserved. There was nothing more to say. That same evening, Gareth's phone received a text message from a number he had deleted but still remembered. "I saw your interview on TV. Congratulations on your success. Hope you're doing well." Gareth looked at this message, neither replying nor deleting. He no longer hated Irene, but wouldn't forgive her either. That marriage and betrayal had become the past, but the scars they left would never completely disappear. 5 years passed. Life continued. Gareth was now a senior executive at Iwell, responsible for the entire technical department. He eventually found a new partner, though he never remarried, but learned to trust and love again, albeit in a more cautious and mature way. Irene found a job as an administrative assistant, with a salary better than the supermarket cashier, but far from the comfortable life she once had. She remained single, occasionally dating, but never developed long-term relationships. The shadow of that betrayal still covered her, making her extremely cautious in relationships. As for Warren, he eventually left the sales industry and opened a small coffee shop in a small city. Business was good, but limited in scale. His ex-wife remarried. His children gradually grew up. His relationship with them improved, but would never be the same as before. Sometimes, when Gareth thought back to that night that changed his life, that night he saw his wife kissing another man, he no longer felt pain, but he wouldn't forget. That night taught him the most important lesson in life. Trust is easy to destroy, but almost impossible to rebuild. The price of betrayal, for either party, far exceeds its momentary pleasure. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.